Frankenstein, or the Modern Prometheus, is a classic novel written by Mary Shelley in 1818, and it is still talked about more than a century later. Aside from being a teenager when she started writing the novel, Shelley faced a tragedy during her writing journey of Frankenstein. The tragically wonderful novel of Frankenstein tells the story of Victor, a scientist who had a curious mind since childhood. He wants to figure out more about the world, unveil its secrets, and take off the veil of ambiguity from anything that seemed vague and undiscovered. He said, "The world was to me a secret which I desired to divine, curiosity, earnest research to learn the hidden laws of nature, gladness akin to rapture, as they were unfolded to me, are among the earliest sensations I can remember." However, the story does not begin with Victor Frankenstein. The novel starts with 5 letters from Captain Robert Walton to his sister Margaret to keep in touch with her. In these letters, he talked about his journey to the North Pole and the lack of a worthy friend to accompany him in the icy lands, until one day, Walton and his crew were stuck in the middle of frozen water in the ocean. Suddenly, they witnessed a giant figure in the distance crossing the ice on a sledge. The next day, the ship's crew found another sledge, but this time was a half-dead man on it. They brought the dead man, or the so-called dead man, to the ship, took care of him until he became a sane human being, able to talk but still very sick. Walton spent some time with the guy, and that led to a friendship between him and the poor ill guy. Then the latter decided to reveal his secrets and the story that brought him to the North Pole. At this point, Walton's letters end and Victor Frankenstein starts telling his harrowing story. Victor Frankenstein grew up like any normal kid in Geneva, Switzerland, with his parents, Caroline and Alphonse Frankenstein. 2 brothers, William and Ernest, and Elizabeth, their sort of adopted daughter. They lived as a happy family for some time until it was time for Victor to go to university. "Something awful happened," he described it in his words. "The first misfortune of my life occurred, an omen, as it were, of my future misery." Elizabeth was the first to be diagnosed with the scarlet fever, but she was saved. His mother was to be the next in line, except her fever was much more severe and it led to her death, and a grief settled in Victor's soul. After some delay, he had to go to the University of Ingolstadt in Germany. He spent 2 years studying natural philosophy, chemistry, along with alchemy. Days and nights passed with immense hard work, and he finally discovered the secret of life. Using his knowledge, he indeed created a living being by his own hands with collected corpuscles. The concept of creation itself terrified him. He said, "Now that I had finished, the beauty of the dream vanished, and the breathless horror and disgust filled my heart, unable to endure the aspect of the being I have created." Instead of joy and excitement for what he accomplished, Victor was horrified by his creation. The monster did come to life, but it was a matter of minutes before he ran away. Victor then turned into an almost mad person, sick for months, while his friend Henry took care of him. Meanwhile, Victor received a letter from home bringing news of his younger brother William's murder. Victor went back to Geneva to mourn for his brother, only to find that their housekeeper Justine, a lovely girl whom the Frankenstein family treated as their own, was accused of killing the poor boy. She was innocent. Victor met the true killer on his way back to Geneva, and it was the monster of his own creation. Here the story reaches its climax. Justine was executed, and Victor couldn't even prevent it because he was afraid of proposing the truth. He said, "My tale was not one to announce publicly. Its astounding horror would be looked upon as madness by the vulgar." Grief, guilt, and remorse led Victor to flee to the Swiss Alps, searching for solitude, the kind of solitude he described as deep, dark, death-like solitude. He then met the monster and had a heated argument with him. At this point, the monster starts telling his side of the story. He was an ugly, hideous, gruesome thing. One look at him and people would run for their lives. He faced many more issues than that with the way he barely coped with his body and understood the way it worked, with the five senses, hunger and cold. He found for himself an occupation which was observing, or more precisely, sulking, a cottager's family. They were called deduce, a blind old man with his son and daughter. He learned language from them, from pure observation only. He didn't care to approach them, fearing they wouldn't accept him for the obvious reasons. He was right, actually, because after a very long time of him just watching the family from a distance, he decided to try his luck. He first approached the blind man. The blind man, of course, welcomed the monster into the house, and they had a great time together, but not until the rest of the family came back home to find their father with a monster. They freaked out. The monster freaked out too. He left, they ran away, and the monster turned into a very miserable creature. Driven by revenge, he killed William, Victor's brother. The monster, after finishing his own story, asked Victor to make a she-monster, a mate for him to accompany him in life and ease the pain of loneliness and neglect. Victor agreed at first, but not until he was about to finish the creature did the realization hit him. And he started to think of what distractions the two monsters could bring to humanity. After all, it was the monster who destroyed Victor's family. He could not risk another possibility of a monstrous behavior, so he destroyed the almost finished monster. Thus, Victor broke his promise, and the other monster went threatening for yet another revenge. Victor thought he meant to kill him, but on the night of his wedding with Elizabeth, the monster killed the bride. Victor's father then died from grief, and with Victor's best friend Henry previously murdered in the story by the monster, which made 4 of his loved ones killed by the monster. Victor Frankenstein at that point finally decides to hunt for the monster, seeking his own revenge. It's in his chase that Victor meets Captain Walton. Long story short, Victor tells his story and then dies on the ship. The monster finds him, cries over his body, asks for forgiveness, and then heads to his own end.